The morning started like any other morning on Colony 7. Hei Wan-yoon stood in the communications room of the Orbital Defense Station, drinking her third cup of coffee. Her younger brother, Dae-jung, worked at the Agricultural Research Center below on the planet's surface. He had sent her a message earlier about the new crops they were growing. She smiled thinking about it. Colony 7 was peaceful. 300,000 people lived there. Most of them were scientists, farmers, and their families. Children played in the parks. People went to work. Everyone felt safe. Earth was far away, but they were still connected. They were still human. They were still home. Then the alarm started screaming. Hei-won dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. Her eyes fixed on the display screen. 20 ships had just appeared in the system. Big ships. Warships. They carried the markings of the Karath Dominion. Her commander, an older man named Song-ho, immediately opened communication channels. His voice was calm and steady. That was his way. Always calm even when things looked bad. This is Colony 7 Defense Station. You have entered human territory. Please state your intentions. The response came quickly. Too quickly. A reptilian face filled the screen. War Leader Karn. His scales were dark red, almost black. His eyes were cold. Human territory? Karn laughed. It was an ugly sound. This system belongs to the Karath now. You have 1 hour to evacuate. Leave everything behind. Just take your lives and go. Song-ho kept his voice level. Hei-won admired that about him. She felt her hands shaking, but he showed nothing. War Leader, there must be some mistake. This colony has been registered with the Galactic Council for 20 years. We have proper documentation. We have done nothing to threaten the Karath Dominion. The strong take what they want, Karn said. The weak lose what they have. This is the way of the galaxy. You humans are weak. Everyone knows this. Evacuate or die. Those are your choices. The screen went dark. Hei-won's hands moved automatically, checking systems, calculating numbers. 300,000 people. The colony had transport ships, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Even if they started evacuating immediately, they could maybe save 50,000 people. Maybe. Send an emergency message to Earth, Song-ho ordered. Tell them everything. Then start evacuation procedures. Hei-won tried to contact her brother. The line was busy. Everyone on the planet was trying to call everyone else. She sent him a text message instead. Simple words. Get to the spaceport now, I love you. The hour passed like a nightmare. Ships launched from the planet packed with people. Children crying. Families separated. Not enough time. Never enough time. Hei-won watched the clock count down and felt sick. When the hour ended, Song-ho tried to contact Karn again. He begged for more time. Just a few more hours, please. We're evacuating as fast as we can. There are children down there. Karn's response was simple. He opened fire. The orbital bombardment started with the cities. Massive energy beams fell from the sky like the anger of an ancient god. Hei-won watched the screens and screamed. The research center where Dae-jung worked vanished in a flash of light. The schools, the hospitals, the homes. Everything burned. 240,000 people died in the first hour. The survivors were rounded up by Karath soldiers and loaded onto transport ships. Slaves. They were taking slaves. The defense station couldn't fight back. It had weapons, but they were designed to stop pirates and small raiders. Not a fleet, not this. Song-ho ordered everyone to the escape pods. Hei-won was the last one to leave. She set the station to broadcast everything that happened. Every detail. Every horror. Earth needed to know. The galaxy needed to know. As her escape pod drifted away from the dying colony, Hei-won made a promise to her brother. To all of them. This would not stand. Somehow, someway, humanity would answer this crime. On Earth, Ambassador Jae-ho Shin watched the recordings with tears running down his face. He was an old man. He had spent his whole career working for peace. He believed in diplomacy. He believed in conversation and compromise. He believed that violence was the tool of the primitive. He called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The council members listened to his plea. They looked at the evidence. They saw the recordings of the massacre. Then they voted. No intervention. The Karath had claimed the territory by right of conquest. That was their way. The council could not interfere in the internal matters of member species. They offered their condolences. They suggested that humanity should have been stronger if they wanted respect. Ambassador Shin stood before the council in their great chamber. His voice was different now, harder, colder. "You have made your position clear," he said. "We understand now. Strength is all that matters in this galaxy. Peace is seen as weakness. Mercy is seen as fear. You have taught us a valuable lesson today." He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing needed to be said. "We tried to be peaceful. We tried to be good neighbors. We tried to follow your rules, but you have shown us that your rules only protect the strong. Very well. If strength is what you respect, then strength is what we will show you." Back on Earth, the vote was taken in a secured bunker deep underground. Every nation's representative was present. Every face was grim. The question was simple. War or surrender, fight or accept the loss, stand up or stay down. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Tae-Yang Kang received his orders at 0600 hours. He was a calm man, quiet and thoughtful. He had studied history his entire life. He knew what war meant. He knew what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. He had hoped they would never need to remember. But the galaxy had made its choice. He stood before his officers and spoke clearly. "We tried peace. They chose war. Now we will show them the difference. Prepare the fleet. We leave in 3 days." Hae-Won-Yoon recovered from her escape pod 3 days later. When she heard about the mobilization, she volunteered immediately. They gave her command of a new stealth destroyer, the Shadow of Terra. She painted words on the hull herself. No mercy, no quarter. Humanity was going to war, and the galaxy had no idea what that really meant. Ambassador Jae-Ho Shin stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. The room was enormous, carved from a single piece of crystal that caught the light of the neutron star outside. Representatives from 200 species sat in their designated seats, watching him with various expressions of curiosity, boredom, or amusement. They did not take him seriously. He could see it in their faces, in the way they shifted in their seats, in the quiet conversations they had while he spoke. To them, humanity was still the new species. The weak ones, the ones who smiled and agreed to everything. "This council has failed in its duty," Shin said. His voice echoed in the chamber. "You witnessed a massacre. You saw civilians murdered, children taken as slaves, and you did nothing." Counselor Velnara, an avian creature with silver feathers, spoke from her high perch. Her voice was kind but firm, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "Ambassador Shin, we understand your pain, but the Karath acted within their rights. They claimed the territory. Your people could not defend it. This is the way of the galaxy. The strong survive. The weak must adapt, then we will adapt," Shin said quietly. He pulled out a data crystal and placed it on the transmission pedestal. "I am here today to make a formal declaration. As of this moment, humanity is in a state of war with the Karath Dominion." Several council members laughed. Not cruel laughter, but the kind of laughter adults make when a child says something foolish. War humanity? They had seen Earth's forces. A few dozen ships, some orbital defense platforms. Nothing that could threaten a real military power. Shin waited for the laughter to die down. Then he continued. "I want to explain something to you, all of you. You think you understand war. You have your territorial disputes, your honor duels, your brief conflicts that end with negotiations and treaties. You fight until one side admits defeat and then you both go home. You think that is war." He activated the data crystal. Images appeared in the air above the chamber. Cities in ruins, millions dead, nuclear weapons detonating, chemical warfare, concentration camps, genocide. "This is what humans call war," Shin said. "We fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of our own people. We invented weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We created tactics designed not to defeat enemies, but to break them so completely they could never rise again. We did these things to each other." To our own species, the laughter had stopped. The chamber was silent now. The images kept coming. Trenches filled with bodies, cities turned to ash, children starving behind barbed wire. "We learned from this," Shin continued. "We learned that war is terrible. We learned that peace is precious. So we chose peace. We came to the stars hoping to leave that darkness behind. We thought the galaxy would be different. We thought civilization meant something." He turned to face the council directly. "But you have shown us that peace only works if everyone chooses it. You have shown us that in this galaxy mercy is weakness, restraint is cowardice. You respect only strength. Very well. We will give you strength. We will show you what total war means. And when this is over, you will understand why we tried so hard to avoid it. Velnara shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had actually looked at the historical data. She had seen numbers that made no sense. 60 million dead in one war, 20 million in another. Entire nations mobilizing every resource, every citizen, everything they had for years of continuous fighting. It seemed impossible. Surely these records were exaggerated. No species could be that brutal to itself and survive. But she looked at Ambassador Shin's face and felt a chill run through her feathers. He was not lying. He was not exaggerating. He was warning them. Far from the council station, things were happening that the galaxy did not see. Ships that had been registered as cargo haulers were being retrofitted. Their civilian exterior panels fell away, revealing military-grade armor and weapon systems underneath. Research stations that supposedly studied asteroids were suddenly launching combat drones by the thousands. Mining colonies were producing refined metals at impossible rates, feeding shipyards that worked around the clock. Commander Hyunwoo Lee sat in a dark room filled with screens and data streams. He was in charge of information warfare. His job was to make sure the galaxy understood what was happening and why. Every species needed to see the truth about Colony 7. They needed to see the Karath brutality. They needed to know that humanity was not the aggressor here. He sent carefully edited footage across thousands of communication channels. The massacre, the slaves, the Council's refusal to help. He made sure every civilian in every system could see it. He wanted them to ask questions. He wanted them to wonder what their own governments would do if someone attacked them. Public opinion began to shift. Many species had assumed the humans deserved what happened somehow. That was easier than feeling guilty about doing nothing. But the footage was clear. Children had died. Families had been torn apart. And the Great Galactic Council had offered only condolences. On the Karath homeworld, war leader Karn laughed when he heard about humanity's declaration of war. His advisors showed him intelligence reports about human military capabilities. It was nothing. A few dozen ships, maybe 100,000 soldiers. The Karath could field millions. Let them come, he said. We will crush them and take Earth itself. Humans will make excellent slaves. They breed quickly and they follow orders. This war will be profitable, his advisors agreed. One of them did suggest caution. Perhaps they should look more carefully at human history. Perhaps there was something they were missing. Karn dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. History means nothing, he said. What matters is strength, and we are stronger. On the shadow of Terra, Captain Haewon Yoon ran her crew through training exercises, again and again, until they could hit a target the size of a coin from 10,000 kilometers away, until they could board and secure a hostile ship in less than 3 minutes, until every person on her crew could do their job perfectly even while exhausted and terrified. She pushed them hard. Some of them complained. She ignored the complaints. They did not understand yet. War was not about honor or glory. It was about survival. It was about doing terrible things so your people could live. She would make sure her crew was ready. She would make sure they came home. At night in her quarters, she looked at the last message from her brother. She had read it 1,000 times. She knew every word by heart. The crops were growing well. He was thinking about proposing to his girlfriend. He wanted Haewon to be there for the wedding. She had sent back a simple reply. She would be there. She promised. She had broken that promise. But she would keep a different one now. The Karath would pay. Every single one of them who had participated in the massacre would face justice. Not the Council's justice. Not some diplomatic resolution. Real justice. Human justice. Admiral Tae Yang Kang watched the fleet assemble from the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable. 300 ships. More were coming every day. Hidden shipyards were launching vessels that had been under construction for years, supposedly for civilian purposes. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were very good at deception when necessary. He thought about the vote that had brought him here. Unanimous. Every nation on Earth had agreed. They would fight together or die together. Humanity had finally united, not in peace but in war. It was sad in a way. They had needed an outside enemy to overcome their differences, but maybe that was the lesson. Maybe that was what the galaxy needed to learn. Push humans too far, Hurt them badly enough and they would show you what they really were. Not peaceful because they were weak. Peaceful because they remembered what happens when they were not. "All ships report ready, sir," his first officer said. Kang nodded slowly. "Then let us teach the galaxy about war." The Karath outpost on Theta Station had stood for 300 years. It was a massive structure, built into an asteroid, with docks for 50 ships and living quarters for 10,000 soldiers. War leader Karn had placed his best commander there, a veteran named Skrath who had fought in 20 campaigns. Skrath watched his sensors with growing confusion. Something was wrong. Ships were disappearing. Not destroyed, just vanishing from his screens. 3 supply convoys had failed to arrive. 2 patrol groups had missed their check-ins. Communication with the outer defense platforms had gone silent. He sent scouts to investigate. They found nothing. Empty space. No wreckage. No bodies, nothing. It was as if the ships had simply ceased to exist. His soldiers were starting to whisper about ghosts, about evil spirits that hunted in the darkness between stars. Skrath told them to be quiet. There were no ghosts. Just an enemy they had not learned to see yet. He was right. But that made it worse, not better. The shadow of Terra hung in the darkness, invisible to Karath sensors. Human stealth technology was beyond anything the galaxy had developed. The ship was coated in materials that absorbed sensor sweeps. Its heat signature was masked. Its energy emissions were dampened. It was a hole in space, a predator waiting in the deep water. Captain Haewon Yoon studied the display showing Theta Station. Her crew was silent, focused, ready. They had been training for this moment for weeks. Every simulation, every drill, all leading to this execute, she said simply. The shadow of Terra moved like a knife in the dark. It slipped past the outer defenses without triggering a single alarm. The Karath had placed their sensors in predictable patterns. They watched for enemies coming from known approach vectors. They did not understand that humans had studied their tactics for months, finding every gap, every weakness. The ship materialized inside the station's docking bay. One moment there was empty space. The next moment there was a human warship with its weapons armed and its marines already moving. Lieutenant Bo-Ra Park led her team through the breach. They moved fast and silent. Human armor was lighter than Karath gear, allowing for better speed and agility. Human weapons were precise, designed to minimize collateral damage while maximizing lethality against armed targets. The Karath soldiers who tried to respond found themselves facing something they had never encountered. Humans fought differently. They used cover effectively. They coordinated without constant communication. They adapted to changing situations instantly. Small teams operated independently, making decisions without waiting for orders from above. Park and her squad reached the command center in 12 minutes. Skrath stood there with his personal guard, weapons raised. He was a warrior. He would not surrender. That was fine. Park was not here to take prisoners. The fight was brief and brutal. Karath were strong and tough, but human combat doctrine had been refined through thousands of years of warfare. Park's team moved as a single unit, supporting each other, covering angles, never leaving anyone exposed. In 90 seconds, it was over. Skrath lay dead on the floor of his own command center. "Station secure," Park reported. "Uploading data from their systems now." Commander Hyun-Woo Lee received the data feed back on the Indomitable. His team began analyzing it immediately. Supply routes, fleet positions, communication codes, command structures, everything. The Karath had kept detailed records, never imagining an enemy could access them. "This changes everything," Lee said to Admiral Kang. "We have their entire logistics network. We know where every supply depot is, every fuel reserve, every ammunition stockpile." Kang studied the data. A human concept formed in his mind, something the Karath would not understand until too late. You did not need to destroy an enemy's armies if you destroyed their ability to supply those armies. Cut off the food, the fuel, the ammunition, and the strongest warriors became helpless. "Transmit new orders to all ships," Kang said. "We are not engaging their fleets directly. We are destroying their supply network. Every depot, every warehouse, every fuel station. Cut them off. Let them starve." The human fleet split into dozens of small groups. Each one targeted a different supply point. The Karath had spread their resources across multiple systems, thinking it made them safer. It did the opposite. It meant humans could hit many targets at once and the Karath could not defend them all. War leader Karn received reports of the attacks with growing fury. Humans were not fighting honorably. They were not facing the Karath fleet in open battle. They were hitting supply bases, support stations, civilian shipping. This was not how war was supposed to work. He ordered his fleets to hunt down the human ships. But every time his forces arrived at a human attack site, the humans were already gone. They struck fast and vanished. His ships wasted fuel chasing ghosts. His supplies dwindled. His commanders started reporting shortages. Then the cyber attack started. Commander Lee's Information Warfare Division had been busy. They had studied Karath computer systems. They had found vulnerabilities. Now they exploited them. Karath ships suddenly found their navigation systems giving false readings. Communication networks became unreliable. Sensor data was corrupted. Commands were intercepted and altered. Karath commanders stopped trusting their own equipment. They started using backup systems. Those were compromised too. They tried using manual controls. But modern warships were too complex to operate without computers. The confusion led to mistakes. Karath ships fired on each other. Fleets became separated. Coordination broke down. Within 3 weeks, the Karath military was in chaos. Their supply lines were cut. Their communication was unreliable. Their commanders did not know which orders were real and which were human deception. Morale collapsed. Soldiers who had been confident of victory now feared every shadow. The first Karath ship surrendered after a human strike team disabled their engines. The crew emerged with their hands raised, begging for mercy. Captain Yoon accepted their surrender. She had her crew treat the prisoners well. Feed them, give them medical care, let them communicate with their families. Then she made sure every Karath frequency carried footage of the prisoners being treated with dignity. Commander Lee ensured the images spread across Karath networks. The message was clear. Surrender to humans and live. Fight and face impossible odds against an enemy you cannot see or predict. More ships surrendered, then whole outposts. Karath soldiers who had bragged about crushing humanity now whispered that humans were demons, that they could not be fought, that they appeared from nowhere and struck without warning, that their technology was beyond understanding. None of it was true. Human technology was not magic. It was just different. Developed through centuries of humans fighting each other, learning from every mistake, refining every tactic. The Karath had grown complacent fighting enemies who fought the same way they did. They had no answer for human innovation. Admiral Kang watched the Karath collapse with no satisfaction. This was necessary, but it was not glorious. War never was. He thought about the cost. Human ships had been damaged. Human soldiers had died. Not as many as the enemy, but every loss hurt. He visited the medical bay every day. He knew the names of every wounded soldier. He attended every funeral. He wrote letters to families. This was his burden as commander, to order people into danger, to live with the consequences of those orders. On the shadow of Terra, Haiwan Yoon found a message from a rescued human slave, a woman who had been taken from Colony 7. She thanked Yoon and her crew. She said knowing humans were fighting back had given her hope, had kept her alive. Yoon read the message alone in her quarters. She allowed herself to cry for the first time since her brother died. Then she wiped her eyes and returned to the bridge. The war was not over. There was still work to do. The galaxy watched with growing alarm. What they were seeing should not be possible. The Karath Dominion was one of the most powerful military forces in known space, yet humans were taking them apart piece by piece. Not through superior numbers or overwhelming force, but through tactics and strategy that seemed almost cruel in their efficiency. Species that had laughed at humanity's declaration of war were not laughing anymore. They were quietly reviewing their own defense policies. They were wondering what would happen if humanity ever turned those terrifying capabilities against them. Counselor Velnara watched footage of human operations with a sick feeling in her stomach. She had warned them. She had told the council that humans were dangerous. No one had listened. Now it was too late. The galaxy would never see humanity as weak again. The question now was whether they would see humanity as monsters or as necessary protectors. That, she realized, would depend on what humans did after they won. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Every species had communication networks. Every network carried the same images. Human warships appearing from nowhere. Karath forces surrendering. Supply bases burning. The mighty Karath Dominion, conquerors of dozens of worlds, being systematically dismantled by a species everyone had dismissed as weak. On the Vrixian homeworld, the military high command gathered in emergency session. General Thax, a four-armed insectoid creature, played the footage again and again. His analyst provided commentary. They are not using conventional fleet tactics, one analyst said. They avoid direct engagement. They target infrastructure. They use stealth and deception as primary weapons rather than auxiliary tools. This is completely outside standard military doctrine. Thax clicked his mandibles nervously. The Vrixians had been planning to expand into human territory next year. They had trade disputes with Earth, nothing serious. Just the usual pushing and testing that strong species did to weak ones. Now he was reconsidering everything. Send a message to Earth, he ordered. We wish to renegotiate our trade agreements. On their terms. Similar conversations happened on dozens of worlds. Species that had taken advantage of human patience were suddenly eager to make amends. Trade restrictions were lifted. Territories that had been disputed were quietly ceded. No one wanted to be the next Karath. In the Galactic Council chambers, Councillor Velnara called for another emergency session. This time everyone attended. There was no laughter now. No bored expressions. Every representative watched the presentation with absolute attention. We need to understand what we are dealing with, Velnara said. I have spent the past 3 weeks studying human history and culture. What I found is disturbing. Humans are not a warrior species by nature, but they have spent their entire existence fighting. Fighting nature. Fighting each other. Fighting to survive on a planet that tried to kill them from the moment they evolved. She displayed Earth's history. The ice ages. The plagues. The predators. The natural disasters. Humans had survived all of it through innovation and determination. Then they had turned those same qualities on each other. Most species, when they develop technology, move toward peace, Velnara continued. War becomes too destructive, too costly. We learned to negotiate because fighting made no sense. Humans learned the opposite lesson. They learned that war is inevitable, so they became very, very good at it. A counselor from the Dravis Empire, a species known for their military strength, spoke up. But they cannot match us all. If we united against them, they would fall. They are still just one species. Velnara fixed him with her sharp gaze. Are you volunteering to lead that coalition? Because I suspect you would find recruiting difficult. Everyone here is thinking the same thing. Better them than us. Better the Karath suffer than risk human attention. The chamber fell silent. She was right. Every species was running calculations. How much would it cost to fight humanity? What would they gain? Was it worth the risk? The answer kept coming back the same. Meanwhile, Commander Hyunwoo Lee's information warfare campaign continued. He made sure every civilian in the galaxy could access footage from Colony 7. He showed them the children who died, the families torn apart, the slaves taken. Then he showed them human forces rescuing those slaves, treating surrendered Karath soldiers with dignity, providing aid to Karath civilians caught in the conflict. The message was carefully crafted. Humans were not monsters. They were not conquerors. They were a people pushed too far, fighting for justice, not expansion. They would be brutal to their enemies, but merciful to those who surrendered. They would follow rules of war even when their opponents did not. Public opinion across the galaxy shifted. What had been dismissed as a minor conflict now looked like a justified response to atrocity. Protest movements formed on multiple worlds demanding their governments support humanity, or at least stay out of the way. Ambassador Shin received more diplomatic communications in 1 week than he had in the previous 5 years. Everyone wanted to talk. Everyone wanted assurances. Everyone wanted to know what humanity wanted. He met with representatives in his office on the council station. His message was consistent. Humanity wants peace, but we will not accept peace at the cost of justice. We will not be victims. We will not watch our people die while the galaxy does nothing. Stand with us or stay aside, but do not stand against us. Some species offered more than neutrality. The Helian Federation, a peaceful trading alliance, quietly provided human ships with refueling stations in their territory. The Quarren Collective, who had lost colonies to Karath aggression years ago, shared intelligence about Karath defensive systems. Not everyone in the galaxy was happy about the Karath Dominion's power. Humanity had just given them an opportunity to see it reduced. On Earth, people watched the war with mixed emotions: pride in their military's success, horror at the necessity of violence, fear of what they were becoming. The question echoed through every news broadcast, every political debate, every dinner table conversation. Were they doing the right thing? Admiral Kang addressed that question in a public statement broadcast across human space. We did not choose this war, but we will finish it. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but to ensure that no one ever thinks they can hurt humanity without consequence. We fight so that future generations do not have to. We remember what we are capable of so that others will not forget either. On the shadow of Terra, Captain Yoon gathered her crew. They had been in combat operations for 5 weeks straight. They were exhausted. Some were wounded. All were changed by what they had experienced. She looked at their faces. Young and old, men and women, scientists and soldiers, all of them had volunteered for this. All of them knew the cost. The galaxy is watching us, she said. They are afraid of us now. Good. Fear will keep them from testing us again. But we need to be careful. We need to show them that we are not monsters, that we fight with honor even when our enemies do not. Every action we take is being recorded. Every decision we make will be judged by history. We are not just fighting for victory. We are fighting for the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Her crew nodded. They understood. This was bigger than revenge. Bigger than justice for Colony 7. They were defining what humanity would be for generations to come. Would they be feared tyrants, or would they be strong but just, powerful but merciful? The choice was theirs to make. Every day, every battle, every decision, Lieutenant Bo-Ra Park sat in the mess hall with her squad. They were playing cards and joking like soldiers always did. But she could see the change in them. They had killed. They had watched friends die. They had seen things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. One of her soldiers, a young woman named Jiwoo, put down her cards and asked the question they were all thinking. Ma'am, what happens after we win? Do we go home? Or do we become the thing we are fighting? Park did not have an easy answer. That depends on us, on what we do next, on whether we can be strong without being cruel, whether we can win without losing ourselves. I do not know if it is possible, but we have to try. Across the galaxy in military academies and strategic institutes, analysts studied human tactics. They tried to understand. They tried to find counters. But every analysis reached the same conclusion. Human warfare was not about technology or numbers. It was about thinking differently, about refusing to accept that there were rules that could not be broken, or tactics that could not be used. A Dravis military instructor taught his students about the human approach. They do not ask if something is honorable. They ask if it works. They do not fight the way they are expected to fight. They find what you think is your strength and turn it into your weakness. They make you fight their war, not yours. One student asked if that meant humans were unbeatable. The instructor thought carefully before answering. No, but beating them would require becoming like them, abandoning our traditions, fighting without honor. The question is whether that victory would be worth the cost. War leader Karn finally understood what he was facing. In his command center on the Karath homeworld, surrounded by advisors who had failed him, he looked at the maps showing his shrinking territory. His fleet scattered, his supplies depleted, his soldiers demoralized. He had thought humans were prey, easy targets, a quick victory that would strengthen his position and bring wealth to the Dominion. Instead, he had awakened something terrible, something the galaxy had been lucky to not see until now. We cannot win, one of his advisors said quietly, not unless we are willing to match their brutality, to abandon every principle of honorable warfare, to become like them. Karn snarled. Never, we are Karath. We do not sink to the level of lesser species. But inside he knew. He had already lost. The only question now was how much more it would cost before he admitted it. The galaxy held its breath and watched humanity move toward the Karath homeworld. This was the final test. Would humans show mercy and victory, or would they show the galaxy what total war really meant? Every species wondered, every leader calculated, and everyone feared the answer. The Karath homeworld was called Krathax. It was a beautiful planet, covered in red deserts and purple oceans. 15 billion Karath lived there, most of them civilians, children, families, people who had nothing to do with the massacre at Colony 7, but who would suffer if the war came to their doorstep? Admiral Tai Yang. Kang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the image of the planet on his display. He had brought 300 ships to this moment, thousands of soldiers, weapons that could turn that beautiful world into a dead rock. He had the power to do it. The question was whether he should. War leader Karn had one last card to play. The orbital defense network around Krathax was the most powerful in Karath space. 2,000 weapons platforms, 500 defensive stations, millions of mines and automated drones. It was designed to stop any invasion force. No enemy had ever breached it. Karn sent a message to the human fleet. Turn back now and we will negotiate. Attempt to breach our defenses and you will lose half your fleet before you reach orbit. Is this worth it? Is revenge worth so many human lives? Admiral Kang considered the question. It was not about revenge. It had never been about revenge. It was about making a statement. About showing the galaxy that humanity would go to any length to protect its people, that crimes against humanity would be punished no matter the cost. He sent back a simple reply. We did not come this far to turn back. Your defenses are impressive, but we did not survive on Earth by being easily stopped. Surrender now and your people will be treated with honor. Force us to fight and we will do what is necessary. The battle began at dawn on Krathax. The Karath defenses opened fire first. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the planet. The human fleet scattered and advanced in waves. Ships took hits, armor melted, crews died, but they kept coming. Captain Haewon Yoon piloted the Shadow of Terra through the chaos. Her ship was small and fast. It slipped between defensive fire that would have destroyed larger vessels. Her weapons officer took out automated platforms with precision strikes. Her navigator found gaps in the minefields that the Karath did not know existed. All around her, other ships fought with the same desperate determination. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. But nothing could truly prepare someone for the reality of combat on this scale. The fear, the noise, the sudden silence when a friendly ship disappeared from sensors. Yoon pushed those thoughts aside. Focus on the mission. Focus on survival. Focus on the people depending on her. She could grieve later. Right now she needed to command. Lieutenant Bo-Ra Park watched the battle from the assault carrier Thunderbolt. Her Marines were suited up and ready. Their job would come after the fleet broke through. They would board Karath defense stations. They would secure key targets. They would do what Marines had always done. The hardest, bloodiest work of war. She walked among her troops, checking equipment, offering encouragement. Some of them were terrified. She could see it in their eyes. That was fine. Fear was natural. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was doing your duty despite the fear. Remember your training, she told them. Remember why we are here. Remember Colony 7. We are not here to conquer. We are here to end this war. Do your job, watch out for each other, and we all go home. She did not tell them that some of them would not go home. They knew that already. They had accepted it when they volunteered. That was what made them soldiers. The human fleet lost 30 ships in the first hour. 1,500 crew members dead. Admiral Kang felt each loss like a physical blow. But the Karath were losing more. Their defenses were built for a different kind of war. A war where enemies attacked in predictable patterns, where battles followed established rules. Humans did not follow those rules. They used decoys and electronic warfare. They coordinated attacks across multiple vectors simultaneously. They sacrificed automated drones to create openings for manned ships. They adapted to every Karath countermeasure within minutes. By hour 3, the outer defensive ring was breached. By hour 6, human ships were in orbit. By hour 10, Marines were boarding Karath defense stations throughout the system. Park led her squad onto Station Omega-7. The fighting was close and brutal. Karath soldiers fought hard to defend their home. But human training and equipment gave them an edge. Not a huge edge. People still died, but enough to make the difference between victory and defeat. She reached the command center and found it empty. The Karath commander had evacuated. Smart. Her team secured the station and raised the human flag. One more objective complete. Dozens more to go. On Krathax, war leader Karn watched his defenses crumble. This could not be happening. It should not be possible. The Karath were warriors. They had conquered dozens of species. They were strong. They were powerful. They were not supposed to lose to a species they had dismissed as weak just months ago. His communications officer reported that human ships were requesting a direct channel. Karn accepted. The face that appeared on his screen was calm and weathered. Admiral Kang, the human who had brought death to his doorstep. Your defenses have fallen, Kang said. We control your orbital space. We can bombard your planet from here. We can do to Krathax what you did to Colony 7, but we will not. Because we are not you. Karn felt rage and shame in equal measure. What do you want? Unconditional surrender, Kang replied. Your government will step down. War criminals will be tried. All human prisoners will be returned. The Karath Dominion will pay reparations, and you will never threaten humanity again. Accept these terms and your people live. Refuse and we will do what is necessary. It was not a negotiation. It was a demand. But Karn recognized that he had no choice. He had gambled and lost. Now he had to pay the price. He looked at his advisors. They all nodded. Better surrender than extinction. We accept, Karn said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Admiral Kang allowed himself a moment of relief. Then he issued new orders. Ceasefire. Begin recovery operations for wounded on both sides. Secure the stations, but treat prisoners well. We won. Now we show the galaxy that we can win with honor. Captain Yoon received the ceasefire order with mixed feelings. It was over. They had won. But the cost had been high. She had lost 32 crew members. She knew all their names. She would carry them with her forever. She gathered her surviving crew on the bridge. Today we showed the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Tomorrow we show them what we choose to do with that capability. We will help rebuild. We will show mercy to our defeated enemy. We will prove that strength and compassion can exist together. Her crew cheered. Not loudly. They were too tired for that. But they cheered. Because it was over. Because they had survived. Because they had done their duty and could now rest. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. Humanity had won. The victory was complete. Colony 7 was avenged. The Karath were defeated. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. But among the celebrations there were also memorials. Services for the fallen. Moments of silence for those who had given everything. Because victory had come with a price. And humanity was not so arrogant as to forget what that price had been. Ambassador Jae Ho Shin watched the celebrations from his office on the council station. He felt old suddenly, tired. They had won the war. But what came next would be just as difficult. They had to win the peace. They had to show the galaxy that humanity could be trusted with power, that they would not become tyrants. Counselor Velnara visited him that evening. They stood together looking at the stars. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence. You were right to warn us. We should have listened. We thought we knew what war was. We were wrong. Shin nodded slowly. We did not want to teach you this lesson. We would have preferred peace. But the galaxy left us no choice. Now we must all live with the consequences. Velnara looked at him with something like respect in her eyes. What will humanity do now? You have shown your strength. You have earned fear and respect. But what will you do with it? Shin smiled sadly. That is the question, is it not? We will try to be worthy of the power we have claimed. We will try to be strong without being cruel, just without being weak. We will try to build a galaxy where no one else suffers what Colony 7 suffered. We will try. Whether we succeed remains to be seen. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The occupation began 3 days after the surrender. Human forces landed on Krathax with clear orders. Maintain order. Protect civilians. Begin reconstruction. And above all, prove that humanity was better than those who had attacked them. Lieutenant Bo-Ra Park stood at a checkpoint in the capital city. Krath civilians passed through, heading to work, to shops, to homes. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She was the enemy, the conqueror, but she was not shooting them, not stealing from them, just standing there making sure nobody caused trouble. A young Karath child, no more than 6 years old by human standards, approached her. The child held something in its clawed hands, a toy, broken. The child said something in Karath. Park did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Can you fix it? Park took the toy. It was simple. A mechanical bird. One wing was bent. She straightened it carefully, tested the mechanism, and handed it back. The child made a happy chirping sound and ran back to its parent. The parent, an adult Karath, stared at Park with surprise. then nodded slowly. A gesture of thanks, small moments. But they mattered. They were watched, recorded, shared. The galaxy needed to see that human soldiers could be kind. That occupation did not mean brutality, but not everything was simple. War criminals had to be found. Trials had to be held. Justice had to be served. Admiral Kang established international courts with judges from neutral species. Karath, who had participated in the Colony 7 massacre, were identified and arrested. The trials were public. The evidence was clear. The sentences were harsh. War leader Karn stood trial for crimes against humanity. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He had ordered the attack. He had authorized the bombardment of civilian centers. He had approved taking slaves. There was no defense that could save him, but the trial was fair. He was given lawyers. He was allowed to speak. Every rule of justice was followed. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, no one could say the trial had been a sham. Captain Haiwan Yoon attended the sentencing. She sat in the gallery and watched as Karn received a life sentence. No execution. Humans had abolished the death penalty decades ago, even for monsters like him, even for the one who had ordered her brother's death. She felt nothing. No satisfaction. No closure. Just emptiness. Her brother was still dead. All those people were still dead. Karn in prison did not change that. But maybe it prevented it from happening again. Maybe that had to be enough. The reconstruction efforts were massive. Human engineers worked alongside Karath builders to repair damaged infrastructure. Medical teams treated wounded Karath soldiers with the same care they gave human casualties. Supply ships brought food and medicine to populations disrupted by the war. Commander Hyun-Woo Lee coordinated the information campaign. Show them humanity at its best. Show them we keep our promises. Show them that we are not conquerors. Every act of kindness was documented. Every fair decision was broadcast. The galaxy needed to see that strength and mercy could coexist, but the occupation was not without problems. Some human soldiers wanted revenge. They remembered Colony 7. They remembered friends who died in the war. They did not understand why they should be nice to the enemy. Park dealt with one such incident personally. 3 Marines from another unit had been caught harassing Karath civilians. Nothing violent, just words, intimidation, but enough to cause fear. She confronted them in their barracks. You think you are punishing the enemy? You are not. You are throwing away everything we fought for. We did not come here to become like them. We came here to prove we are better. If you cannot understand that, you have no business wearing that uniform. The Marines were disciplined, sent home. Others learned from their example. Standards were maintained. Because if humans became the monsters they were fighting, then what had been the point? On Earth, people struggled with different questions. Soldiers were coming home changed. Some were traumatized. Some were angry. Some were lost. They had done terrible things for good reasons. They had killed. They had watched friends die. Now they had to live with those memories. The government established programs to help. Therapy, support groups, resources for families. It was not perfect. Nothing could truly prepare someone for the aftermath of war. But they tried. Because caring for soldiers after combat was as important as training them before. Ambassador Shin worked on the diplomatic aftermath. Treaties had to be written. Agreements had to be signed. The relationship between humanity and the Karath had to be redefined. But beyond that, humanity's relationship with the entire galaxy was changing. The Galactic Council offered humanity a permanent seat, not because they liked humans, but because they feared what would happen if they did not. Shin accepted, but with conditions. The Council would establish stronger protections for civilians. Rules of engagement would be codified. Aggressive wars of conquest would be condemned. The Council had to mean something or humanity would withdraw. The Council agreed, not because they wanted to, but because the alternative was worse. A humanity that felt isolated and threatened was dangerous. Better to bring them inside the system. Give them a voice. Make them part of the structure. Counselor Velnara became an unlikely ally. She pushed for the reforms Shin demanded. She spoke in favor of humanity at council sessions. Not because she had forgotten the horror of human warfare, but because she understood that humans with hope and a stake in galactic peace were far better than humans who felt they had nothing to lose. On Krathax, something unexpected happened. Young Karath started joining reconstruction projects. They worked alongside human teams. They shared meals. They learned about each other. Language barriers broke down. Old hatred started to fade, not everywhere, not everyone. There were still Karath who hated humanity, who wanted revenge, who saw occupation as humiliation, but enough Karath saw opportunity, saw that humans were not monsters, saw that maybe, just maybe, something better could be built from the ashes of war. Park watched a group of human and Karath engineers working together to repair a water treatment plant. They joked. They helped each other. They acted like colleagues, not enemies. She thought about her training. All the preparation for combat. All the focus on fighting. Nobody had trained her for this. For peace. For building bridges instead of burning them. Maybe that was the real challenge. War was simple. You had enemies. You defeated them. Peace was complicated. You had to live with former enemies. You had to find common ground. You had to build something together. Admiral Kang prepared to return to Earth. The occupation was stabilizing. Local governments were being reformed. Human forces were starting to withdraw, leaving behind advisors and peacekeepers. His job was done. Before he left, he visited the memorial built for the human soldiers who died in the war. 2,347 names carved in stone. Every single one of them someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. The cost of victory. He saluted the memorial. Then he turned away. The living needed him more than the dead. He had work to do. Reports to write, families to comfort, a military to rebuild for peace instead of war. Captain Yoon decided to stay. Her ship was being repaired. She could go home. But she requested assignment to the occupation forces instead. Someone needed to make sure the peace held. Someone needed to prove that humans could build as well as they destroyed. She would be that someone. Her crew mostly stayed with her. They had fought together. Now they would build together. It felt right somehow. Like finishing what they started. The galaxy watched and judged. Some species saw weakness in mercy. Others saw wisdom. Most saw pragmatism. Humanity had proven they could win wars. Now they were proving they could win peace. That was almost more impressive. Because any species could destroy. Destruction was easy. Creation was hard. Building trust was hard. Forgiving enemies was hard. Humanity was choosing the hard path. And the galaxy was noticing. On Colony 7, now being rebuilt, a ceremony was held. Humans and Karath stood together. The Karath ambassador formally apologized for the massacre. Human representatives accepted the apology but said that words alone were not enough. Actions mattered. The Karath agreed to help rebuild, to provide resources, to ensure nothing like this ever happened again. It was not perfect. Apologies could not bring back the dead, but it was a start. A foundation to build on, and sometimes that had to be enough. Park stood on a hill overlooking the Karath capital. The city was healing, slowly, street by street, building by building. She thought about the future, about the galaxy humanity was helping to create. A galaxy where strength protected the weak instead of exploiting them, where justice meant something, where peace was built on mutual respect instead of fear. It was idealistic. Maybe too idealistic, but it was worth trying for. They had fought for survival. Now they would fight for something better. And maybe, just maybe, they would succeed. 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy looked different, not in obvious ways. The same species lived in the same systems. The same planets orbited the same stars. But everything had changed anyway. The change was in how people thought, how they acted, how they treated each other. The Galactic Council headquarters had been rebuilt. Human architects had helped design it. The new building incorporated elements from 200 different cultures, a symbol of unity, a reminder that strength came from diversity, not domination. Ambassador Jae Ho-shin sat in his office, now one of the permanent seats. He was older. His hair had gone completely white. The war had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching, still working to build the peace he had hoped for all those years ago. A young human diplomat, fresh from Earth, asked him a question. "Sir, do you think it was worth it? The war, all those lives lost. Could we have found another way?" Shin thought carefully before answering. "I ask myself that question every day. Maybe there was another way. Maybe if I had been smarter, more persuasive, I could have prevented the war. But the galaxy we have now with all its problems is better than what we had before. Civilians are protected. Aggression is punished. The weak have voices, so yes, I think it was worth it. But I will never stop wishing we could have achieved it without so much death. The young diplomat nodded, still uncertain. That uncertainty was good. It meant she understood that easy answers did not exist. That leadership meant living with doubt. Admiral Taeyang Kang had retired from active service. He taught now at the new Galactic Military Academy. Human and alien students learned together. They studied tactics, strategy, history, but most importantly, they studied why wars happened and how to prevent them. Kang stood before a mixed class. Humans, Karath, Vrixians, Dravis, and a dozen other species. He told them about Colony 7, about the decisions he had made, about the cost of victory. He did not glorify war. He showed them its reality, its horror, its necessity when all other options failed. A Karath student raised a clawed hand. "Admiral, do you hate us for what my people did?" Kang met the student's eyes. "I hated what your leaders did. I hated the choices they made. But hate is exhausting. Hate prevents healing. Your generation did not attack Colony 7. You were children. Now you are here, learning to be better than those who came before. That is all anyone can ask. We do not inherit the sins of our ancestors, but we do inherit the responsibility to not repeat them." The class was silent. Then a human student spoke. "What if someone attacks us again? What if they test us?" Kang smiled grimly. "Then they will learn what everyone else learned. That humanity fights when necessary, that we protect our own, that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. But they will also learn that we prefer peace, that we would rather build than destroy. That is the reputation we must maintain, strong enough that no one dares attack us, compassionate enough that no one needs to." Captain Haewon Yoon commanded the Joint Defense Fleet now. Human and Karath ships patrolled together. They trained together. They worked together. It had been strange at first, awkward, filled with tension. But time and shared purpose had built something that almost looked like trust. Her second in command was a Karath named Thrax. Young, competent, eager to prove himself. He reminded her of her brother in some ways. That same enthusiasm, that same hope for the future. They stood on the bridge of the Unity, the flagship of the Joint Fleet, watching a training exercise. Human and Karath pilots flew in formation. Perfect coordination. 5 years ago they had been enemies. Now they defended each other. Thrax spoke quietly. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" Yoon nodded. "Do you still hate us?" "My people. For your brother." She was silent for a long moment. Then she answered honestly. "I hated your people for a long time. I wanted revenge. I wanted all of you to suffer the way we suffered. But hate is a poison. It would have destroyed me. So I chose to let it go. Not forget. Never forget. But let go of the hate. Now I work with you. I trust you. That would have been impossible 5 years ago. But time heals. If we let it." Thrax bowed his head. "Thank you. For giving us a chance. For not becoming the monsters we made you fight. That is the real victory," Yoon said. "Not beating you, but building something better afterward." Major Bora Park, trained mixed species special forces now. Her students were the best of the best from their respective militaries. She taught them everything she knew. Human tactics, human discipline, human methods. But she also learned from them. Karath endurance, Vrixian coordination, Dravis strength. Every species had something to offer. She pushed them hard, maybe harder than necessary. But they rose to the challenge. They became something new, not human, not Karath, not Vrixian, something that combined the best of all of them. A new kind of warrior, one that fought for peace instead of conquest. One evening after a particularly brutal training session, her students gathered around a fire. They shared food, told stories, laughed. Park watched them and felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Real hope for the future commander. Hyunwoo Lee ran the Galactic Information Network now. It was part news organization, part intelligence agency, part historical archive. Its job was to ensure the truth was available to everyone, to prevent the kind of propaganda and misinformation that had allowed the Colony 7 massacre to happen. He faced constant challenges. Species that wanted to control information, governments that wanted to hide uncomfortable truths. But he persisted, because an informed galaxy was a safer galaxy. Because lies thrived in darkness and died in light, he kept archives of the war. every battle, every decision, every cost. Future generations would study them, would learn from them, would hopefully avoid repeating the mistakes that led to so much death. On Colony 7, the memorial stood completed, a massive structure of stone and crystal, 240,000 names. Every person who died in the massacre. Humans visited to remember, Karath visited to apologize, others visited to learn, to understand. To ensure it never happened again, the colony itself had been rebuilt. Better than before. Human and Karath families lived there now, side by side. The children played together, went to school together, grew up knowing each other as neighbors, not enemies. That was the real hope. The next generation that would not carry the hatreds of the past counselor Velnara watched the changing galaxy with satisfaction. She was old now. Retirement was close. But she had lived to see something remarkable. A galaxy that was learning, growing, becoming better. Humanity had forced the change. Not through conquest, but through example. They had shown what was possible. Strength with compassion, justice with mercy, victory with honor. Other species were trying to match that example. Not all of them. Not perfectly. But enough to matter. She met with Ambassador Shin one last time before her retirement. They sat in the garden overlooking the council chambers. Neither spoke for a while. Then she broke the silence. You changed the galaxy. You know that, right? Not through your military. Through your choices afterward. You could have become tyrants. Could have used fear to rule. But you chose differently. Shin shook his head. We just tried to be who we always were. We did not want to conquer. We wanted justice. We got it. Now we work to maintain it. That is all. That is everything, Velnara corrected. Power is easy to take, hard to use wisely. You are using it wisely. That is rare. Precious Shin smiled. We try. Every day we try. Some days we succeed. Some days we fail. But we keep trying. That is all anyone can do far from the council station. On the edge of known space, Commander Lee's intelligence network detected something. A signal from beyond the explored galaxy. A new species. Potentially a new threat, or a new friend. He sent the information to Admiral Kang. They discussed it. Agreed on a course of action. They would investigate carefully, approach with caution, offer peace, but be ready for war if necessary. That was the human way now. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. Never be caught unprepared again. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity. Had learned what happened when you pushed them too far, but the galaxy was vast. Unknown threats still lurked in the dark. Unknown challenges waited. The peace was fragile. It needed constant work, constant vigilance, constant effort, but humanity was ready. They had proven they could fight. Now they were proving they could build. They had shown their teeth to those who needed to see them. Now they showed their compassion to those who needed it. They were warriors and builders, destroyers and creators. Whatever the galaxy needed them to be on Earth in a small park, a group of children played. Human children, Karath children, Phyrexian children, others. They did not care about species, did not care about history. They were just children playing together. That simple scene represented everything the war had been fought for. A future where old hatreds did not poison young lives their parents watched. Some were veterans. Some carried scars from the war, physical and mental. They watched their children play and felt something precious. Hope. The war had been terrible. The cost had been high. But maybe, just maybe, it had been worth it. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity declared war. The day the quiet species showed their teeth. The day fear was introduced to those who thought themselves untouchable. But more importantly, the galaxy would remember what came after. The peace, the rebuilding, the choice to be better,